Another edition of the Trey Wallace podcast. Happy to be joined by my buddy from the Sporting News, Bill Bender. It feels like it's been about a day since I have seen Bill, which is the case since we were out there in rainy California. Bill, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, we didn't get tanned. We did not get a tan in sunny LA. We got rained on all week, didn't we?
That was depressing. Like, I go out there and I'm thinking, all right, this is going to be sunny. It's going to be California. It's going to be nice. No, it turns out it's raining. We're getting drenched during the post-game ceremonies on the field. I don't know. Whoever came up with the idea for that stadium did not think about the rain that would come in sideways.
No, it was a interesting weekend for sure. I'm glad you and I got to connect a little bit and go to media day, and then the game. I don't know what to talk about. You start. I've been using the analogy as like you brought Cinderella to the final, and you ended up watching Carrie.
Yeah, is it? I mean, and looking back on it and how everything plays out, I think if Michigan beats TCU, we get a better game, in the final. But turns out that TCU had their number, and you go into this matchup with Georgia, and they're just such a dominant football team from the offensive line, the defensive line, the wide receivers, you name it, and you look at TCU and they had their flaws. And I don't even think Kendre Miller being a running back for TCU would have done anything for the Horned Frogs. I just think they're Jalen Carter and what Georgia's defensive line was able to do. I think it just showed throughout the season that they just wrapped up what they had done for the 13 games prior.
Yeah, right off the bat, there was a false start. And after the game, Sonny Dykes said, we'd only had 3 false starts the whole season. So right off the bat, there's nerves. You heard him talk about how they overran things, may have, missed assignments, breakdowns, and you can't have that many. And it showed. I mean, they had multiple, and you can't have that against the team that's a heavyweight like Georgia. They've been there, done that. Their execution in the first quarter, especially on offense, was unbelievable, especially with Bennett. And honestly, I thought this game was probably, and this is horrible to say, I thought it was probably over at 17-7.
I don't disagree. I mean, it got so out of hand, you started wondering, okay, what's going to be the title to your story? I mean, it just didn't feel like it was going to be close, no matter what TCU did. And I give credit to how the game was set up and played, and the atmosphere and whatnot. TCU fans traveled well. Georgia fans traveled well. It made for a fun environment. I think when you look at the game, though, Georgia is just a dominating force. And I want your opinion on this. We use the word dynasty a lot. I think in college basketball, I think in baseball, I think in football, we use it a lot, NFL. Is Georgia at that mark yet, or would they need to win another one in the next 2 years to maybe set up the whole dynasty conversation? Or are we here with the back-to-back titles?
I think we're here because, so they'll be our lifetime, I think, the 4th team to have a chance to go for a three-peat. And I go look at those 3 teams, and I was talking about this earlier today with somebody. Nebraska won back-to-back with Osborne, and then that 3rd year, we all know where we were when Arizona State beat them. At least I know where I was. I had a buddy on the Arizona State team, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
USC wins back-to-back. That 3rd year, they lose to Texas in one of the greatest games ever played. Alabama goes back-to-back. We all know how it ended in the kick 6. So if you're at the point where people are going to remember when it ends, you're a dynasty. They've won a couple stats we were throwing about. You and I were talking about this on the bus. Now they've won 29-30 and 33 of 34. You have to go all the way back to Florida 2020 to find their last regular season loss. Then you peek at their schedule, Trey, and what do we see? We're allowed to look at. Kirby would never do it. You and I can do it. It looks to me like 10-0 going to Knoxville.
I think it does. And I think when you look at the biggest question to me is, we have seen a quarterback in Stetson Bennett who has defied logic over the last 2 years in the SEC as a starting quarterback. He really has. And now you're going to see a change, and I'm interested to see what that change really looks like and what kind of competition there's going to be at quarterback, for Georgia when springtime comes around. And, yes, they're going to lose some players off this squad, but then they just reload. They've turned into Alabama's brother, and not even and I'm talking like straight up same age type of deal, twin brother. I don't care how you want to call it. That's what they are now. So I'm curious. Kirby Smart talked about it, looking ahead, to next year. I could see that, Bill, where they are undefeated the time Tennessee game comes around. And I don't know if Tennessee's going to be as good as they were this year. So, this is a chance for them to make another run to a national championship. And Kirby's just reached a new point in coaching, Bill. Like it's interesting to me that Nick Saban was up there doing the pregame show, and Kirby Smart's on the field, coaching for a second national championship in a row. He just reached a new level, Bill, hasn't he? Kirby Smart.
Yeah, he has. And a lot's being made of Pollock's comments at halftime but here's my thing on it. One, he's not lying.
Nope.
They have to. And when you've won 2 in a row, you've taken hold of the sport. And 2, I don't really think Nick Saban had like some weird Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine reaction to it. I think he just sat there. Yeah, maybe they use that as bulletin board material. Sure. Or more, maybe not. Maybe it's just like you said, that we're dealing with 2 brothers the other one grew up a little bit. And now they're, like now in the driveway when they're playing one-on-one, it's physical and even. So
Yep.
I think every conversation going into next year is going to start with Georgia and Alabama, and then it has to quickly follow from the SEC angle with, can LSU seriously challenge Alabama, and can Tennessee seriously challenge Georgia? Because I think they're also going to be, we did one like everybody else. Those 4 teams are going to be in every preseason way to early top 10, maybe even top 5.
I'm curious in your thoughts on, when you just brought it up, teams that can make a run towards Georgia next year is in your Tennessee. Let's talk about Tennessee just for a minute. Is that a squad to you with Joe Milton at quarterback? Probably for the whole year. I know they have Nico coming in. I think everybody needs to chill out on the Nico thing just for a little bit. That kid has to grow up. He's got to add some weight. He's got to learn a system. Is Tennessee a team that could potentially give Georgia a run next year? Or was this lightning in a bottle this past season that really sets up their future, but, maybe not expected for next season?
Well, I mean, you got to continue recruiting players to play in that system. You lose a Jalen Hyatt, you lose a Tillman, but I mean, Brew McCoy, I was telling you how much I liked him and the receivers that they have. You can find receivers to work that system. So it comes down to Joe Milton, who I think every evaluation of him is pretty simple, right? Can throw the ball a mile, could probably throw it through a window, but can he be accurate enough in that system to make it roll? And I think he can. So I like their chances to compete, and maybe it's when they get Georgia in Knoxville this time, it maybe not a 27-13 game. They've got to be able to do that. It's not going to be easy, obviously, to repeat against Georgia and Alabama, but they've to me separated themselves a little bit from Florida until the Gators figure it out, from South Carolina till they show some consistency. And there's not really, they play do they play A&M in the non-league? That'll be a good game. I think they do.
No, I think it's the next year. I'm so confused. Yeah, I think it's the next year. It could be.
I mean,
yeah.
But I mean, there's definitely some big games for them. But yeah, they absolutely compete. And a lot of people, when I was doing my early top 25, wanted me to put LSU over Tennessee. But I was like, did y'all watch what I watched this year? And I know Jaden's back, but I mean, maybe LSU closes that gap. Tigers are going to be pretty good.
Your thoughts on Ohio State, a team that comes up short, but plays just a really good game against Georgia in that Peach Bowl. And even just the Big Ten in general, I don't want to say that they're not falling back a spot or anything like that. You had two teams in the semifinals this year. But if you look towards next year, which one of these guys are going to make that run towards the national championship again? Is it going to be Michigan and they fall short in the semifinals? Or is it Ohio State and you finally get over that hump? Like how much of the pressure is, or a better question is, who has the most pressure to finally get over that hump and win that national championship again?
Yeah, I think Ohio State and Michigan both face very interesting questions. Like Ohio State, I mean, as you know, I live up here for your listeners. I do live in Central Ohio. I've been around the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry my whole life, so I like to think I know some about it. They haven't lost 3 in a row to Michigan since 1995 to 1997, and that was a very painful chapter in Ohio State football history because they always had the talent to do it, but John Cooper's teams could not get past Michigan. Now, Michigan, to me, if Jim Harbaugh comes back, and with each day that passes, I think he's going to be back.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that, and I think it's less about him wanting to go to the NFL and more about these NFL teams not hiring him. That's how it feels. So Michigan gets Blake Corum back, gets Donovan Edwards back, has his best quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. Of these top 5 teams, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, they're the only one that has the quarterback back that started the entire season. That's from game 2. I'm sorry,
yeah.
But basically did. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Michigan to kind of put away that TCU loss, get back to the playoff, and get the national championship swing. And I think there's pressure on Ohio State to beat Michigan. But I was talking to some people after the game, and I may have had a beer or two after the game Monday, and then I get a little really chatty. But and you and I were talking about a little bit. I wonder if Michigan and Ohio State, and I've been around it my whole life. Let me ask you your perspective instead of mine. Do you think they worry too much about each other on some level?
I think if you look at like Georgia, Alabama, they worry about each other, but they are not up in each other's, backyard every single day, worrying about, okay, they're doing this, we have to do this, we have to be better at this. I think Michigan, Ohio State is just a constant battle, Bill, where you're trying to one up the other and it maybe comes back to bite you in the ass.
I think Michigan and Ohio State have built their teams to beat each other instead of winning the whole. And Ohio State's got enough talent to win the whole thing. I think Ohio State, from a talent standpoint, in Michigan, Ohio State, or Alabama, Georgia's zip code. I don't know if Michigan is, because they need more 5-star kids. They've got 2 5-star kids in their starting lineup. They do a great job developing kids. I'll give Jim Harbaugh that. The only 2 5-star guys that were starting this year for them, J.J. McCarthy and Will Johnson, the corner that everybody loves because you watch him, you're like, that's a 5-star talent. Georgia has that everywhere. Alabama has it everywhere. And quite frankly, Ohio State has it everywhere too. I always make the joke up here that Ohio State, they're the only Big Ten school with SEC talent.
That's actually pretty on par, to be honest with you, if people really think about it. Switching lanes real quick. NIL, transfer portal, the window is going to be coming to a close here in about a week. It'll open back up in the spring. What has been your thoughts on how this has played out when it comes to the transfer portal, but also when it comes to how NIL has been such a factor in where these kids are going? And I'm not talking about the 3-star kids, the guys that just want playing time. I'm talking about these top schools reloading their rosters and having to pay a good chunk to get them.
Yeah, it's checks and balances with me with this. I think I like the kids have an opportunity to play. I think the transfer portal has not been used how it was intended. When you have 23, 24 kids on a team, like Texas A&M, for example, enter the portal, then what are we doing? Like, is this because of the playing time? Is this because of bad NIL deals? Is this, what is the major is it because the coaches are leaving that happens? So I think NIL, when you hear I would love to know the numbers, like and I don't know that we ever will. And that's the hard part, is like NFL, when you're dealing with salary cap and those kind of things, I know exactly how much money Joe Burrow makes.
Yep.
It's right there on Spot Track. You can look at everything. I think college will have to get a point at some point where you kind of know what these guys are doing. That way you can gauge that it doesn't get out of control. The one thing with NIL I always said is, if the market, I would like for the market to dictate, the market to correct itself and be correct. Otherwise, we're going to get out of hand, and then you run into a situation where it could really negatively impact college football.
I think that's a trend that's going to continue for a while until somebody, and I don't know when there's going to be rules put out. I don't know. You know, they've got themselves in a situation, Bill, that they can't get themselves out of right now. And I think that's their fault for jumping into this. But NIL is something completely different compared to how it is now. I want to end with this. Looking towards 2023 and kind of putting an end towards 2022, you know, what besides national championship, is there a storyline from this past season that sticks out to you the most, besides maybe Georgia, you know, a game or something? You know, there were so many good games this year, so many nail biters at the end. You know, in the SEC, you had Tennessee, Alabama, then you back that up with LSU, Alabama craziness, the blowout, you know, between Ohio State, Michigan. Well, what are you going to look back at 22 on and think about?
The two most memorable regular season games for me will be Tennessee, Alabama, because they broke that streak. It was an incredible game. Hendon Hooker, the breakthrough, probably the sigh of relief, I'm sure, that they, you know, and how that game ended. And with that, the fact that the best games of the year, with the exception of Georgia and Tennessee, were mostly shootouts. That, you know, Kirby talked about that. It's hard to play defense now. And then the other one was obviously Ohio State, Michigan, because it was the first time Michigan had won in Columbus since 2000. And you wonder, that's why next year is going to have so much. And I tell people, yes, they do obsess about each other, but it literally, I told you about this story that I had a guy, one of my friends, call me, and I was coming back from the game after covering everything. He said, Billy, he goes, they on Fox, they're chanting. I'm Billy back home, by the way. He said, Billy, they're on Fox, they're chanting, "We want Urban" in Columbus. I go, are you kidding me? Like, Brian Day's got a 45-5 record. So it's just a reminder that college football can make us all act crazy. And it's so much fun to cover. And the best part about the weekend to me wasn't the game. It wasn't being out in LA. It was honestly being around people that are in the business, that cover this sport so hard, looking at how tired guys are and tired how women are covering this sport. And we all look tired. We all were exhausted by Tuesday morning, but it was a lot of fun to see everybody.
It was. I came back with a cold. I didn't expect to leave California and come back with a cold, which is interesting, but man, just a crazy fun season. Good to put a wrap on it. Will be nice to take a couple days and chill and then get into basketball and whatnot. But Bill Bender, tell everybody where they can follow you and all your great work, buddy.
Yeah, I'm at Bill Bender 92 on Twitter, I think. I hope that's what it is. And we work for Sporting News. I've been there for quite a bit. And like I said, there's going to be plenty. We have a way too early top 25. We have a look at Georgia, Alabama, and we have the 7 storylines for next year already up. So already digging into some of that stuff. It's going to be 35 weeks till we see another game, but there's plenty of time to talk about it.
That's Bill Bender. I'm Trey Wallace. Another edition of the Trey Wallace podcast on the Outkick Network. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.